So how did you get your start as a chef?
My first restaurant job, I was 10. Bus tables at a crab shack in Rehoboth, Delaware. And I worked fast food through high school. I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Southwest Virginia. We didn't have restaurants. Like, I didn't know that like a chef was something that you could do. There was Chef Tell on TV and Julia Child, but there weren't like chefs to look up to. So I washed dishes when I was at JMU for a year, promptly failed out. And I started washing dishes at a country club because the hours were good, the pay was fine, and allowed me to play in bands and that kind of thing. I had no idea this was something I was going to do for the rest of my life, even though I hadn't done anything else up until that. And I caught the bug. I had a chef who was a yeller and screamer and thrower of things, but was really talented. And he took me under his wing, and so I would just hump out all the dishes and do all the prep, and then I could hang out and watch them on the line and just kind of work my way up through there. So the classic dishwasher to chef routine. Yeah.
What was one of your favorite restaurants to work in through that process?
Through that process?
Yeah.
A restaurant called Eno in Atlanta. The chef was incredible. He was an Atlanta native, which sometimes is kind of rare. It's like Florida, like nobody's from there. But he lived in Italy for almost 10 years, and he worked around the country in a bunch of Michelin 2-star restaurants. Came back, and he opened this restaurant that was just incredible. It was smallish, but everything was amazing. The quality of product was stuff that I'd worked in some decent places. I just had never seen anything like the product that we were getting. And he was a really nurturing, really kind chef. I learned an immense amount about food and cooking and how to manage in that restaurant.
And from there, what is one of your favorite styles of cooking?
I mean, buttered my bread both actually and metaphorically with Southern food for a really long time, and I love it, and it's super, super dear to my heart. After 27 years of cooking Southern food, I kind of got to the point where like anything Asian, anything Israeli, Middle Eastern, big bright flavors, lots of herbs, acid, is what I want to eat. And so subsequently, I really enjoy cooking that way as well. So there's a lot of that stuff going on at the house.
What is one aspect of cooking that excites you now? Like now that you're out of owning, managing, where it's real Jason Alley, not Jason Alley comfort, not Jason Alley Floro.
Yeah. Kind of everything excites me about cooking now because I'm able to do it in a way that is just so honest. I mean, it could be boiling a pack of spaghetti noodles and pulling sauce out of the freezer, right? But I'm just doing it for the people that I love on a daily basis. And we're busy, right? We've got 4 kids and I've got a couple side hustles and, life is busy, but it's nothing like it was in the restaurant business. So rarely do I get home and I'm like, I can't believe that I have to touch more food.
What's better about being a chef today than when you opened your first restaurant?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think a lot of things. I think culture has changed dramatically. I opened my first restaurant in 2002, so 21 years ago. And when I was coming up through the ranks, it was still that really classic yelling, screaming, belittling, throwing. And I never thought that was a very good way to learn. So I tried my best to not be that person in my restaurants. But it still was much coarser and hours much longer than you see today. The current generation, thankfully, just doesn't put up with that kind of stuff. So, you see more women in the kitchen. You see more acceptance of people who get sick taking a day off. We had people who would call out with panic attacks. And it was like, okay, I get it. And that was not the case when I started at all.
Complete this sentence. I couldn't cook at all if you took away my
sense of smell. Not only because that's where taste comes from, right? Like we have really basic taste sensors in our tongues. But everybody knows from when they get a cold, right? Day 2 or 3, you can't taste anything. And it's really hard to cook if you can't taste. But also, smell for me is a big indicator of when things are done, when things are their freshest, when they're at their peak. It's a huge part of being able to cook anything, really.
What's unique about the Richmond restaurant scene?
A lot. One thing that's really different about Richmond, it's a relatively small, it's a big town, small city, right? And it was never the place where you came to make your name. Like you go to New Orleans, you go to San Francisco, you go to New York. This was a place where people oftentimes came back from being in those other areas. So they're bringing in disparate influences, and our location, we're surrounded by incredible agriculture, incredible products, and none that, initially were because of any sort of fancy trends, right? Sam Edwards has been curing the best country ham in the world now it's going 4 generations, right? But it's perfect. The seafood is amazing. It's really incredible. Some of the best cheeses that I've ever had were made by nuns outside of Charlottesville.
What about Richmond diners?
As diverse a community of diners as I think that there is. We may not see them every day in each individual restaurant, but we have a really vibrant, young, disposable income having contingent of people, and they're coming from all over the country, and they want to eat interestingly. They want new experiences. We have people who have been here for, literally generations and generations and generations, both very wealthy to very poor. We have a really vibrant immigrant community. It's pretty awesome. I don't know if you have to be crazy, but I don't think I've ever met a chef who wasn't. And there's absolutely science involved. So I'm not trying to dodge the question, but yes.
Who's the most famous person you ever cooked for?
We cooked for a lot of pretty famous people. Drew Barrymore, Sally Field, Patti LaBelle. Those are big ones. Sometimes it's hard to remember until you start going through the list. Those were probably 3 of my favorites, though. Patti LaBelle was an awesome story that's not appropriate to tell in this environment, but she was amazing, and I'm a huge fan. We've cooked for a lot of celebrities, and we had a pretty hard and fast rule that you didn't blow them up on your social media or text until they were gone. Right? We wanted people to be able to come in. We really approach everything very egalitarian. At Comfort, we didn't do reservations until like the last 3 years. Everybody waited in line. Oh, Eric Repair. I got to cook for Eric Repair, which was insane. He was very kind. But everybody was treated the same. I turned down reservations for the governor. I was like, I'm sorry, if you want to come and stand in line with your constituents and have a beer, come on, we'd love to have you, but I can't break this rule.
What was a defining moment for you as a chef?
Countless. A lot of them not awesome. I definitely had some moments that, I would consider to be growth opportunities now, but were not awesome in the moment. Probably the biggest accomplishment of my career, at least up until that point, was the, opening night of Comfort, the first restaurant that we opened. It was an incredible night. It was horrifying. Like I said, I was 29. My wife was pregnant with our first kid. I grew up super, super poor. Like none of this ever seemed like anything that would ever be possible. And then, we opened, and all of a sudden there were people in there, and they were buying food in this room that my wife designed and this menu that, I came up with. And it was pretty overwhelming and awesome. And I've been able to do some incredible stuff, cooking at the James Beard House multiple times, TV stuff, whatever, like a lot of really incredible things. But I don't know that anything was as sort of life defining as that evening.